What about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in?
Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill.
It could be the closest presidential race in U.S. history.
Steve Garvey was named the National League's most valuable player.
And here in California, can Dodger legend Steve Garvey make history as the first Republican to win a U.S. Senate seat in 3 decades?
How I'm campaigning now is the Steve Garvey that used to take the field every day and give 100%.
I'll do what I need to do to protect our state and the country.
And fed up with shocking crimes at our stores, will Californians vote to come down hard on all the burglars, flash mobbers, and smash and grabbers?
Gascon refuses to file any gang enhancements. What he has done is embolden criminals.
What I'm telling you is that there are cities in LA County today, including LA, where homicides are down.
And in LA County, law and order is on the ballot. Do voters want to elect a new Get Tough DA or keep the reformer they already have? I'm Jamie Yukas.
And I'm Pat Hardy. There are so many important decisions to make this election across our state and across our country.
We're here to help with the CBS News Los Angeles election guide.
Prop 32 would increase California's minimum wage from $16 to $18 an hour.
In the next hour, we'll have clear, fact-based information on the props.
My focus is not on Republicans versus Democrats. It's not on left versus right. It's literally about the interest of the country, the security of the country.
And I'm running for Congress because politicians have created more problems than they've solved.
And the hottest Southern California congressional races that could decide which party controls Congress.
And I'm Mike Rogers of the desk. The people who count your votes are taking unprecedented steps this year to keep themselves and your ballot safe. We're talking bulletproof glass, security guards, and security cameras. Why all these steps? It's coming up.
Everything you need to get ready to vote right here.
Right now, as we present the CBS News Los Angeles election guide. We have a lot of really important decisions to make this election.
And we want to help you get ready to fill out your ballot with information and analysis on all the top races in California.
And we'll begin with Proposition 36. It's the most hotly debated ballot measure of the year, and it promises to get tough on crime.
Supporters say it will hold the people who loot our stores and deal fentanyl accountable. But critics say Prop 36 will do more harm than good to the criminal justice system.
Well, KCAL News reporter Jasmine Veal gets us started.
It's break-ins like this. These smash and grab robberies that have business owners fed up.
If this is keep doing again and again and again, what should I do?
Very angry. You know, it grows that anger inside us. Go work hard for your money.
And products locked up, like inside this Compton Rite Aid, to deter shoplifting and organized retail crime. So along came Prop 36. It promises to hold the worst retail theft and drug traffickers accountable by increasing punishments like those who sell fentanyl.
We've got to restore some teeth in the law.
Greg Totten, the CEO of the California District Attorneys Association, who helped draft the proposition last year, says this measure reforms Prop 47 that voters approved in 2014, which softened punishments for shoplifting and drug dealing in order to reduce California's prison overcrowding.
Under existing law, somebody can go into a store, steal every day for 30 days, and as long as they steal less than $950, all of those offenses are treated as a misdemeanor.
Totten says Prop 36 also creates a new treatment-focused court process for some drug possession crimes. But Governor Gavin Newsom has slammed this measure for being overly punitive and at a cost to taxpayers. He recently passed 11 bills to toughen penalties for shoplifting, including smash and grab robberies.
It's about mass incarceration. It's about bringing it back to 1980s mindset where it's possession of drugs and you end up in state prison. The impact it's going to have on the black and brown community is next level.
Vote no on Proposition 36.
Sam Lewis, the CEO with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, a nonprofit that works to end mass incarceration, says many youth and rehabilitation programs would lose funding due to the added costs with this measure.
Prop 36 will dismantle the public safety mechanisms that we have put in place, meaning prevention, treatment,
and victim services.
The Public Policy Institute of California found over the past 5 years, retail theft increased by 40% in LA.
Are you ready for a sandwich?
There we go.
San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan is one of the main backers of this bill. He visited Langer's Deli in MacArthur Park, where the owner has threatened to close over safety concerns as he makes a push for the proposition.
I think the most costly thing we can do is maintain the status quo.
It will come down to the voters, though, to decide if it's better to stay or change course. Jasmine Veal, KCAL News.
Joining us now with more on Prop 36 from the state capitol is CBS California investigative reporter Julie Watts.
Now, she's covered this extensively for months now. Julie, the latest major poll shows big support for Prop 36. According to the new numbers from the Public Policy Institute, 71% of voters support Prop 36, 26% oppose it. So, Julie, talk to us about that.
Yeah, you know, when you look at those numbers, what's really striking is that there was strong support across the state. So we're talking not only just cities across the state, but also across party lines. We saw strong support from Republicans, Democrats, and independent voters. Majority of support in all three cases.
Well, there is real division, right? The polls showing big support. Leaders, though, across the state obviously divided. We want to break that down. San Francisco Mayor London Breed supports it. She's one of the most progressive mayors and one of, you could argue, the most progressive cities. But so does San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan and San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria. LA Mayor, though, Karen Bass, she has not said whether she supports 36 or not, even though Los Angeles does have huge problems with retail theft and fentanyl. We see it all the time as we report. Governor Newsom opposes the measure, calling it a return to the war on drugs with mass incarcerations and crowded prisons. So how does this compare to policies from the 1980s?
So a couple of things here. First, let's talk about that support, right? Right now, 4 out of the 5 mayors of California's largest cities have publicly supported Prop 36. As you mentioned, Mayor Bass is sort of the outlier there. Interestingly, homelessness is a key issue for her as well, in addition to retail theft. And homelessness is one of the things that many of the other mayors are citing as the reason they're supporting Prop 36. They argue that forcing people into treatment and into programming will ultimately get more people off the street. And it's notable that with Prop 36, if you complete treatment, the charges are dismissed. So there is no prison, there is no jail. Now, you also mentioned the return to the war on drugs, and that is a big part of this debate, right? So to break it down and fact check just a little bit, the Anti-Drug Act in the 1980s mandated 5 years in prison, no parole. 36 is very different. It's sort of a 4 strikes, not really out kind of thing, right? So the first 2 times you're caught in possession of a hard drug, we're talking heroin, fentanyl, it's still a misdemeanor, nothing changes. The 3rd time, it's what's called a treatment mandated felony, meaning if you complete treatment, the charges are dismissed, there is no prison or jail time. The 4th time is what's called a wobbler, meaning either the DA or later the judge could knock it down to a misdemeanor if, say, you're just dealing with substance abuse and that's clear to them. And in all of these cases, you always have the option of treatment instead of incarceration.
Outside the state capitol in Sacramento for us. Thanks for your insight, Julie.
And as we've just been talking about, Julie has been covering Prop 36 closely. You can find all of her extensive reports on kcalnews.com.
Well, California isn't a battleground state for the White House, but we do have 4 races in Southern California that could decide which party controls the U.S. House.
Yes, we've seen the nonstop ads for weeks now. Each race is expected to be very close. In the 41st district, which includes Corona, Lake Elsinore, and Palm Springs, Republican incumbent Ken Calvert against Democratic challenger Will Rollins. Calvert is the longest serving member of the House from Southern California, and he's facing his toughest challenge ever.
In Orange County, it's Republican incumbent Michelle Steele against Democratic challenger Derek Tran. They're in a very close race in District 45, and that covers Buena Park, Westminster, and Fountain Valley.
Also, can't forget Orange County Democrat Dave Min and Republican Scott Baugh running for the District 47 seat held by Democrat Katie Porter, who of course gave up the seat to run for the Senate. District 47 covers Huntington Beach, Costa Mesa, and Laguna Beach. Politico reports that control of the House could come down to this very seat.
And in Santa Clarita, Palmdale, and Lancaster, Republican Mike Garcia is trying to hold on to his seat in a district that now has many more registered Democrats than Republicans. In fact, he's facing political newcomer George Whitesides. And here's KCAL News reporter Lauren Posen.
For years, California's 27th congressional district, with Lancaster, Palmdale, and Santa Clarita, has been home to one of the country's most hotly contested congressional races.
I was raised in this district. As a kid, I played in those mountains.
Former U.S. Navy pilot Republican Mike Garcia is seeking his third term in Congress.
My focus is not on Republicans versus Democrats. It's not on left versus right. It's literally about the interest of the country, the security of the country.
His challenger is a former chief of staff for NASA.
And I'm running for Congress because politicians have created more problems than they've solved.
Democrat George Whiteside says he's a problem solver and wants to protect programs like Social Security and Medicare.
I'm somebody who has actually created 700 jobs in the district during my time leading an aerospace company. So I have a lot of experience in how can we support small business owners, but how can we also mobilize bigger things like maybe clean energy factories or other things to come to the district.
Public safety, cost of living, housing, and the homelessness crisis are just some of the core issues for voters and both candidates.
My job is to prevent the country from turning into California. The people here are fantastic. The weather, geography, the workforce, the businesses, the schools, all great. The problem is it's cost prohibitive to live here right now. And it feels like every policy that comes out of Sacramento is meant to either crush the taxpayer or crush the business owner who pays for the jobs for the taxpayer.
The district used to be firmly Republican, but that's changed in recent years. 42% of voters are registered Democrats and 30% are registered Republicans. Political observers say this hotly contested race could help determine the balance of power in the House of Representatives.
The registration numbers and the demographics, I think that they lean towards Democrats. But you have an incumbent who is a Republican who's saying, I'm a moderate. And that's why we see this really could be a toss-up.
Both candidates know how important the issues are and how close the race could be. The election 4 years ago was decided by only 333 votes.
If you care about any of these issues that are important to our community, you need to vote for somebody who's going to represent your community. And that's, what I hope to be able to bring to Congress.
We have an imbalance right now in California, and we have a blizzard of crises at the national level. And I'm there to make sure that we're mitigating these crises and doing what's right.
In Santa Clarita, Lauren Posen, KCAL News.
Well, KCAL News political reporter Tom Waite joined us now. Tom, let's talk about Garcia and Whitesides. I mean, Garcia is in a heavily Democratic district, but he won the last 3 elections.
Yeah, and it was against the same woman, Christy Smith, right? And also, this is such a fascinating race because this is also a seat that was held by a Republican for many, many years and then unseated by Katie Hill, who then resigned because of allegations that she was having an affair with one of her staffers. So this seat has been one of the most pivotal, sort of interesting swing districts in the country. And Pat, I think you pointed out Biden won the district. This is a huge, huge district. As we pointed out in one of the other pieces there, some of the control of Congress could come down to one of these districts, and this could be one of them. It is going to be incredibly close. Again, as you heard Lauren reporting there, it was just a few hundred votes in a recent election. So what happens there really could be a barometer for other big swing districts across the state.
So many twists and turns with this one, though.
Lots of
Keep an eye,
yeah, right, definitely.
Katie Porter's seat in Orange County, obviously so important to both Democrats and Republicans.
Right, and you have to wonder, will the DUI situation with Dave Min, will that affect his race there? This is another really big race, because think about it, this is in deep, sort of red-orange county, right? Where Katie Porter managed as a progressive to hold on to that seat. Democrats and Republicans definitely have that in their target. They want to flip that seat on the Republican side. Obviously, Democrats are doing everything they can to hold on to it. Katie Porter is sort of an icon among progressive Democrats.
Her whiteboard.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll see what happens in that one too. Another really big nail-biter contest. So we'll be watching it.
You must be so excited.
I am. I think it is exciting. It's also,
a lot of work.
A lot of work. Yeah. So
okay.
we just want to. Yeah, we definitely.
But we know you're not complaining.
Yeah, no complaining.
Okay. In fact, Tom, thanks, and we're going to check in with you also later this hour. And we are going to tell you about getting registered to vote.
That's right. If you haven't registered yet, it is not too late. We're going to show you how to do it. And a race for the White House, unlike any other in modern times, why just a small number of counties could decide it. All registered voters in California should have received a ballot in the mail the first week of October. But what if you didn't? Or what if you'd like to register? You can register to vote until October 15th in California. But don't worry if you miss that date. You can still register to vote at your county elections office or vote center all the way up to Election Day. That's called a conditional registration. Election officials will need time to verify your registration, meaning your ballot may not be counted until after Election Day.
And now a look at the race for the White House, an election unlike any other in U.S. history and an election that could make history in many ways. CBS News correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now from Washington, D.C. Hi, Scott.
Hey, good afternoon. It's like the last mile of those 26.2 marathon miles, isn't it?
Really feels that way. You're so right about that, Scott. And, you know, some people predict that this could be the closest presidential election in history. For example, the New York Times election polling guru Nate Cohen wrote an analysis where Harris could win the bare minimum of 270 electoral votes and Trump loses by only 2. So it could also go the other way. What are you hearing about how close this race is?
It's the first time in modern times where there's really been nobody favored in a race, in a national race of this sort. The polling indicates everything is a coin flip. But I think there's a more fundamental dynamic that's becoming crystallized. Because there is no overwhelming favorite, you want to view this as different than election day and more like election week, because results are still going to come in sluggishly from some of the battleground states. Pennsylvania is returning to its ways from 2020, where they are, under state law, prohibited from opening and counting early votes until Election Day begins, which means you could have a very sluggish return in Pennsylvania, and things don't become clear till the Friday or Saturday of election week.
Just a dozen or so counties, Scott, in 7 states could actually decide this race. And I think that's something that people don't really think about. We have a map of them to show you now. Places like, you mentioned Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, Cobb County in Georgia, Wayne County in Michigan, and Brown County in Wisconsin. Why do these particular counties have such powerful and outsized impact on election night?
Those are areas that are viewed as flexible politically, election to election. Erie, Pennsylvania is a great example. You also mentioned Wayne County, Michigan, Cobb County, Georgia, where it's hard to predict which side that community is going to favor. It deviates. So there's an overabundance of money and attention on those areas versus the state as a whole. We get some version of that in California with the unique number of competitive congressional races.
And that could answer the question why Donald Trump has come to California so much, not only to raise money, but you're talking about those congressional races that certainly could make a difference in the House. Let's go back to Pennsylvania for a moment if we can. Harris and Trump, they've campaigned there more than any other state. So what kind of impact? I know you say it's pivotal, but let's single out Pennsylvania if we can.
Yeah, it's the inflection point. There's difficult math for either side to win without Pennsylvania, which means it's going to get candidate visits, it's going to get surrogate visits. It's not just that it's Pennsylvania, it's little subsets of Pennsylvania that are particularly a focus. And that's why in presidential races, you'll often have the candidates crossing paths in our big, enormous nation in little small spots in the battleground states.
Well, Scott, you had mentioned this earlier about how important it is and how close the race could be and how some votes may not be counted for a week or weeks from now. So the CBS News Decision Desk will call these states on election night, and our colleague Anthony Salvato is heading up the team. With a race this close and a nation this divided, how much pressure is on them to get it right, and how extraordinarily careful do they have to be?
Those projections come only when there is full comfort and it follows CBS News standards and policies. But there's also an expectation after 2020 that this is something measured in days, not minutes, not seconds, not necessarily hours, that it's a week. And the campaigns are working with that understanding as well. You'll recall in 2020, there weren't projections made that President Biden was the winner till the Saturday morning after the election.
CBS News correspondent Scott McFarland from Washington, D.C., thanks so much for sharing with us this afternoon, and we will see you on election night.
An embattled LA City Council member fighting for his seat, the tight race for District 14. Next.
3 seats are up for grabs on the LA City Council this election. One has been getting a lot of attention.
Kevin DeLeon is running for a second term to represent people who live in downtown LA, Boyle Heights, and Northeast LA. This despite calls for him to resign after the City Hall racist audio tape scandal.
Well, his opponent, Isabel Jurado, narrowly beat him in the March primary. KCAL News reporter Jeff DeWin has a look at this race.
Please respect the candidates upstage.
For about 2 years, demonstrators have tailed embattled LA Council member Kevin DeLeon.
Please allow our guests to speak.
Calling on him to resign following the release of a racist recording. Protesters turned their backs each time he spoke during a debate against his opponent, Isabel Jurado, in the runoff race for District 14.
It just has no place in the city of LA.
There was just various reflections on where we are in this district and as a society.
Jurado, who's a tenants' rights lawyer, has been trading insults with the incumbent.
The people voted for me more than they voted for you.
My opponent believes in abolishing law enforcement and LAPD.
DeLeon, who's fighting for a second term, has called the political novice a socialist and an abolitionist.
What do you make of the words that he's choosing to describe you?
I mean, you know, when I think about it, I'm like a true blue Democrat. I've been endorsed by the LA County Democratic Party. I've been endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America, but also the Stonewall Democrats.
The list also includes progressive city council members Hugo Soto Martinez and Eunices Hernandez, who both voted against increasing the LAPD budget.
The LAPD has been funded more than it's ever been funded before, but people in the streets and in these neighborhoods do not feel safer.
Instead, she calls for increasing city services and youth development programs. She says DeLeon has no support among his colleagues.
Are there any of your colleagues in council that back you and endorse you?
I think there are going to be some folks that are coming on board very, very soon.
This is one of 3 tiny home villages in District 14. DeLeon says his office secured this property, then managed the construction to get people off the streets. But Jurado criticizes them for not having running water, and the showers and bathrooms are shared mobile units.
When you have to use the restroom as a woman at night, you have to go outside of that small space, which can be dangerous.
It's a hell of a lot better than the status quo, living among rats, syringes, buckets of feces and urine on the streets.
Jurado would like to see more projects like the Hilda Solis Care First Village, which converted cargo containers into apartments, which cost about $250,000 per unit. But DeLeon's office says the tiny homes are more cost effective at about $65,000 per unit. And he's led the effort to convert 2 hotels into transitional housing. According to the latest filings, DeLeon has raised more than $376,000 for the general election, while Jurado more than $252,000. She also pulled in less during the primary, but still managed to get the most votes. Jeff Nguyen, KCAL News.
We'll be voting for a new person to represent us in the U.S. Senate.
Yes, and one candidate hopes to hit a home run, if you get my drift. The other says that he's out to save our democracy. A look at the Senate race next.
What he has done is embolden criminals.
Our filing rate on hate crimes is actually higher than the entire state averages.
Plus, law and order in LA County. District Attorney George Gascon in the fight of his life, trying to keep his job. But do voters in LA want a new get tough on criminals prosecutor? The DA's race when we come back.
Steve Garvey matured to the point where he was named the National League's most valuable player.
There he is, Steve Garvey, Dodger legend, and he's looking to do something no Republican has done in California in 3 decades.
Donald Trump has betrayed his oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but it's not too late for us to honor ours.
And Congressman Adam Schiff from Burbank led the first impeachment hearings against Donald Trump, but now he's looking to move from the U.S. House to the Senate.
Steve Garvey knows he has an uphill battle to win the seat once held by Dianne Feinstein.
But he says he's running to offer voters a choice from decades of Democrats representing California in the U.S. Senate. And KCAL News reporter Leslie Marin talked to Garvey about his race and the challenges. Here's a portion of that interview.
How I'm campaigning now is the Steve Garvey that used to take the field every day and give 100%. How do we make up that ground? Independence, disenfranchised Democrats that the progressives have talked down, maybe the old Ronald Reagan Democrat, who is pretty much a moderate, as I am too.
Garvey hopes his stance on issues will attract voters.
Are streets safe? Probably not. Is inflation rampant over the last 4 years, double digits? What about the border? Obviously, we know what's happening there. It's still the existential crisis in America.
Garvey's fighting to increase funding for border security, including more money to finish building a border wall and expand detention space. When it comes to homelessness, he supports auditing California's spending on the crisis.
We're in reverse over the last 4 years, and we need to stop that and have good common sense voices and new leadership. Career politicians have failed us.
Now, Adam Schiff says his priorities are climate change, the housing crisis, and restoring people's faith in their government.
Our Lori Perez spoke with him. Here's a portion of that interview.
Schiff's title might change. He says his priorities will not. At the top, helping Californians find affordable housing.
At the federal level, I want to dramatically expand the low-income housing tax credit to incentivize developers to build affordable housing. We also, ought to have a renter's tax credit.
Schiff says he's also focused on tackling climate change.
One of the biggest impacts of climate change is people can't get insured anymore. Their homeowners has gone up through the roof. They can't get insurance for their businesses. So I've got legislation that would help bring insurance costs down by helping the federal government provide a public reinsurance program.
He says one of the reasons he's running is to help get things past the finish line in the Senate, and he's the only candidate with the experience to do so.
I want to make sure that my kids have all the freedoms and more than what I inherited when I was young.
Well, KCAL News political reporter Tom Waite joins us once again to discuss this race.
Yeah, both candidates recently faced off in their first debate.
Yes.
It was what you'd say maybe a little tense.
It was very tense. They tried to start with sort of a lighthearted joke about the Dodgers playing the Padres, but that was about it. It ended there. Adam Schiff landed a lot of pretty intense jabs at Garvey, and including at one point, saying to him, "You're just sort of MAGA wrapped in a different package." And at one point, Garvey was speechless, and Schiff even called him out for that during the debate. And Schiff constantly reminded people that Garvey, who in the debate also admitted that he had voted for Trump, 3 times, which obviously in California could be a problem for a lot of voters. On the abortion issue, he also hit him there. Garvey says he says he's on the pro-life side, as he calls it, anti-abortion rights, but he said he would abide by the will of California voters who approved a constitutional amendment protecting that right.
Well, the Garvey-Trump connection is also interesting. In this race, as you just mentioned, all the MAGA voters he can get, but to win, he also has to appeal to millions of moderates here.
Yeah.
This is California. And that's a tough formula for success.
It is, but and to your point, though, he also needs to get the quote-unquote MAGA vote. And when Trump was recently here at his golf course holding a press conference, he was asked about whether or not Garvey had reached out to him. And he said at that point, Garvey had not. So he wasn't offering an endorsement. So he has to walk that fine line, but he does need the Trump vote to help carry him at least closer. I mean, he's an average of polls behind Schiff by more than 20 points. So you really have to, like you said, Pat, get that middle ground vote, get the moderate voters, but you also need that Trump base of support as well if you're going to win as a Republican. We haven't seen a Republican hold this seat in decades. We had Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer for many years, and now, of course, we have other Democrats and the open seat. But there you go.
It's a fine line. Tom, thank you. We're going to check in with you a little later.
And now to the most heated race in LA County, the battle for the district attorney's job.
Voters will get to decide on 2 very different candidates. Here's KCAL News investigative reporter Ross Palumbo.
It was heartbreaking.
Shot 3 times in the chest.
In his final breaths, just fighting to stay alive.
And actor Johnny Walker's death, leaving behind a chorus of sobs.
You shot the wrong guy.
And screams.
What do we want? Justice for Johnny now!
And stern accusations.
There doesn't need to be a pro-criminal city.
Especially after District Attorney George Gascon did not initially charge the suspects as gang members.
We will continue to evaluate the evidence,
reducing the possible penalty.
It's just way more in favor of the criminals, which is why it's emboldened them to feel very more like I can go ahead and do this.
That is lazy. That is inserting your political agenda over the facts and the law.
It is a prime example, former U.S. Attorney Nathan Hochman says, of why he's trying to take Gascon's job. Campaigning with dozens of ads and $2.5 million in donations.
Gascon refuses to file any gang enhancements. What he has done is embolden criminals.
And that message of Gascon being soft on crime from the beginning
On his first day,
is what Hochman has brought to every corner of the county.
Social experiment
In countless campaign stops.
There are certain crimes he will not allow his prosecutors to prosecute.
Is that criticism accurate?
Well, that is inaccurate, right?
Gascon says he is now accurately detailing a court's reversal on some of those initial prosecution policies.
My blood started to gush.
Saying he is now charging 79% of hate crimes, like this anti-Semitic attack on a 75-year-old Jewish man just last year.
Our filing rate on hate crimes is actually higher than the entire state average.
But his reversal, critics say, only comes after backlash and a brutal rise in all crime.
You have hate crimes that are up double digits. Violent crime has been up every single year. Shoplifting is up 133%.
Fear is way up.
Well, let's stick with the reality first of the crime.
Crime is not way up.
In the overall county, homicides are actually up 8%.
Right, but what I'm telling you is that there are cities in LA County today, including LA, where homicides are down.
That's true, but you're responsible for the whole county.
But I don't police.
But as district attorney, he does choose whether to prosecute and does influence perceptions. Recent polling showing 60% of Angelenos feel safety has declined under him. It's the sentiment that's led to 2 recall attempts and more than a dozen lawsuits from his own deputy attorneys and their union.
District attorneys that voted 98% to support their boss's recall. That's a shocking statistic.
Is that a fair criticism of his?
No, it's not.
Gascon believes those old grudges are now giving way and that older controversies, like his own chief of staff once publicizing that police are trained to kill us, won't help his new opponent.
He's doing what he needs to do.
What do you need to do? What is your biggest criticism of him?
Right. This is a guy that was a Republican in 22, run on a fairly right-wing platform.
Lost horribly.
What do you think of that criticism?
I've actually been a Democrat almost twice as long as he has.
Despite Gascon's attempt to define him, polling shows a majority of voters, 57%, still don't know Hochman.
Do you feel that you have the breakthrough with voters? That they understand you are more than just not Gascon?
Every voter that I'm able to get the message to, absolutely.
Gascon is hoping voters understand that beyond any one crime scene, any one death, or any one prosecution, he believes he has kept his pledge to voters.
Congratulations, Mr. District Attorney.
Made before he broke through to become LA's 43rd district attorney.
People can criticize him for 1,000 different things, but the one thing that they cannot say is George Gascon lied to me.
And for more information on all the big races and issues on the November ballot, just go to kcalnews.com/votersguide.
I'm Mike Rogers here at the desk. We're looking at security surrounding the election, both your ballots and the people that are counting them. Hear from the LA County Registrar after the break.
Are you concerned about climate change? Well, voters will get to approve or reject the most expensive plan in state history to fight it. We're talking wildfires, rising seas, shrinking coastlines, drought, and heat waves. And we're all seeing the effects of extreme weather shifts in California. Prop 4 asks voters to approve $10 billion in bonds to address these issues. And we'd all have to pay them back with tens of millions in interest. Want to learn more? We do have an in-depth video on Prop 4 on kcalnews.com/votersguide.
The people who count your votes say both security and transparency are more important than ever this year. That's why we want to go ahead and check in with KCAL News assignment editor Mike Rogers, who's been digging into this. Mike, you've learned registrars across Southern California rolling out extraordinary measures to keep both the people counting the ballots as well as us casting our ballots safe.
Yeah, that's right, Jamie. And in some counties like Riverside County, they actually just implemented a whole new security system at their registrar of voters. And I actually want to show you because we've gotten some inside looks into these voting count centers, including in Riverside, where they are starting new video surveillance. They're doing things like including metal detectors and cameras to make sure that people outside can still see in while keeping people inside safe. I want to show you LA County, though, because this is a brand new ballot processing center. It's the first time they're going to use it in a presidential election. And in this facility, they even have bulletproof glass. I was able to speak with the LA County Registrar of Voters, Dean Logan, about the safety concerns in this building. Is there a concern about safety at that location? You guys installed, from what I read, bulletproof glass at the new processing facility. Is there a concern for safety?
I think that we have to take that threat seriously. So we know that in other places in the country, there have been attempts to disrupt the process. We have had incidents here with suspicious mail. That's why we engaged the sheriff's canine unit. So yes, we have built this facility for security and for safety, but we've also built it with transparency in mind. So we want to convey the seriousness and the significance of the voting process, but we also want to be sure that we don't subject ourselves to disruptions or denial of service attacks, that type of activity.
Yeah, and now I want to show you one other unique thing that they do here in LA County. They actually use 7 sheriff's helicopters to fly in the ballots to this ballot processing center in the city of Industry. Yeah, they say not only geographically it helps because LA is such a large county, but safety. Having to travel those ballots by patrol car for such long distances obviously causes concern as well. So as long as the weather cooperates, they'll use some of these helicopters. Let's jump back to Riverside, though, because this was a big measure that this board of supervisors did out there. You can see the tape on the ground. Our Joy Benedict got inside this registrar's office where the tape is going to mark where metal detectors will soon be. In addition to that, they're including fencing, a ton of more security cameras, and as I mentioned, a monitor for people to watch those security cameras so they can balance the need for safety and transparency. This is costing the county in Riverside $673,000 to get all of this done, Jamie. But again, they say that safety is of the utmost priority, especially after what we saw in 2020.
Well, that's after 2020, transparency became such a thing. People had so many questions as to what the process was like and what was happening inside. But there's some new measures there too.
There are. In LA County alone, the building that I just showed you, they're going to have over 200 cameras that not only they can monitor, but the public can monitor on their website as well. We're going to be tracking that here on election night at the desk.
So you'll be able to see everything.
Absolutely.
Mike, thank you. Pat, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Jamie and Mike. And still ahead here, revamping efforts to tackle LA County's homeless crisis.
There are studies that have shown that emergency room visits go down, inpatient stays go down.
We've seen a lot of tax increases and other programs, expensive spending. Doesn't seem like a wise move.
A closer look at Measure A and impacts it could have. That's next.
Homelessness is one of the biggest issues facing LA County.
Well, voters will get to decide if they want to add a half-cent sales tax that would be used for homeless outreach services.
It would replace another sales tax measure voters approved 7 years ago.
And KCAL News political reporter Tom Waite breaks it all down.
My TV, my furniture.
Brandon Warren proudly showing us his apartment. Before moving here to the Lamp Lodge, Brandon was living in his car.
Can't stretch out. You can't shower.
The Lamp Lodge is located here in Skid Row, a beacon, really, and a place where hope is sometimes in short supply. This building has 81 units, and it's more than a home. It's a community with supportive services. Jay Armand was living on the streets for years until he found a home here.
It was really heartbreaking, almost hell. It's hard to sleep during the day or the nighttime.
Lamp Lodge was made possible in part because of Measure H funding. LA County voters passed Measure H 7 years ago, temporarily raising the sales tax 0.25% to fund homeless programs, but Measure H expires in 2027. Now Measure A is on the ballot this November. It would double the amount of sales tax for homeless programs to 1/2 cent, and it would be permanent. Homeless care providers say it's essential.
We have housed 81 clients here. 81 homeless people are no longer on the street in this building. This is just this building alone. It's more than just providing like actual housing. It's providing that actual support that they need.
Critics of Measure A say throwing more taxpayer dollars at the homeless crisis is a mistake.
We've been watching what's happening with a lot of municipal governments as they try to determine what to do with their homelessness situation. We've seen a lot of tax increases and other programs, expensive spending, engagements and contracts with non-governmental organizations proliferate over the last few years, and nothing seems to fix the problem. So increasing taxes, or at least extending a doubling of the tax into the future, just doesn't seem like a wise move for Los Angeles County.
The LA County Health Department supports Measure A, saying taxpayers ultimately pay more when people live on the streets.
There are studies that have shown that emergency room visits go down, inpatient stays go down, outpatient visits go up, and we're not taxing our public infrastructure as much when we're able to take care of people and bring them indoors.
The LA County Health Department says because of Measure H, 22,000 people have been placed in housing.
And Tom joins us once again.
There's a big trust issue here. Do people trust government to use their tax money wisely? We've spent billions on this.
Right.
Is it making it worse? There's so many questions for people.
There are, and people, to your point, are already saying we already taxed enough in California. So Measure H was a 1/4 cent sales tax. This will be a 1/2 cent if it passes. So will people, do they have the appetite to do this? The people in the piece, as you heard there, they say if we don't get this money, it will make the homeless crisis explode even further. But also you hear the other side saying exactly that so much of this money is being wasted. It's not doing as much. I will tell you this crisis will be very expensive to solve because the process of bringing someone inside, getting them treatment, and then keeping them there is not inexpensive, as you know.
No, it's not. And yet again, people want to see something done. So they may be willing to go for this, Tom. And that leads to my next question. How many votes are needed to pass this measure? And what does the polling show?
So right now the polling is very close. It's around 50% of the people will approve it. And also that is the number of votes that it needs, more than just over 50%. So it's another tight one, right? I mean, I think it's just going to come down to how people view progress in the homeless count. And there are signs that the crisis is ebbing in some parts of LA. In the latest count, there were some encouraging numbers. However, it's still very much a pervasive problem. And so we don't know if this doesn't get approved. Obviously, people who run these programs are sounding the alarm that if they don't get this money, that will be regressing, right? But others say there's enough money in the bank already for this. Let's use that. So we'll see what voters decide.
Hey, we will, and we'll see you on election night.
That's right.
Well, still ahead, a new debate over same-sex marriage.
The measure that could bring changes to the state's constitution. There are 10 props on the ballot. That's a lot to dive into. We're trying to help with something we call Prop in a Minute.
Let's see if we can do it. A prop boiled down in very clear and concise language with quick analysis to help you decide.
And full disclosure here, sometimes these props in a minute go a little longer than a minute. Here's an example. Prop 3, and KCAL News anchor Susie Sell.
It might be hard to believe these days, but 16 years ago, California voters approved a law that defined marriage as a legal union between a man and a woman only. But 7 years later, in a landmark ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled same-sex marriage was legal in all states. California has recognized same-sex marriage ever since, but lawmakers just never got around to removing the outdated and unenforceable ban from the state constitution. Prop 3 would officially remove the same-sex marriage ban from the California Constitution.
So who put this on the ballot? State lawmakers put this on the ballot because it would change the state constitution, and any time we amend the Constitution, the voters have to weigh in.
So what do they want? This measure is symbolic in that it repeals language in the state constitution that has been ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court.
So, what do critics say? The California Family Council and the American Council for Evangelicals argue that this proposition is fixing a problem that doesn't exist. In comparison to prior efforts around marriage equality, there's been very little pushback on this effort. Many conservative leaders who may have concerns about same-sex marriage have stayed quiet, given many of the concerns about a backlash being raised, similar to those that have been raised following overturning Roe v. Wade.
And we have you covered on all the props. For videos on each one, go to kcalnews.com/votersguide. Thank you so much for watching our Election Guide special. I'm Jamie Yukas.
And I'm Pat Harvey. Be sure to stay with KCAL News and CBS News Los Angeles for the very latest election coverage.